All right, everybody. Hello. We're jamming out to the funky music there. It's good to see you all. Thank you for joining Marketing Magic. It is very, very good to see you. I'm glad that you could join me tonight. We're going to get to this really quickly. Please let me know where you guys are from. What are you hoping to learn tonight? What business are you in? And what are you trying to learn from in the marketing space right now? Are you a business owner? Are you a marketing professional? Some people just come in to sharpen the saw, which is totally fine. But just love to hear from you and what you are bringing to the table and what you're hoping to learn tonight. So, just a couple quick ground rules. I'm going to ask you not to multitask and just try to stay plugged in to what we're going to be covering tonight over the next hour, next 58 minutes. I want to make sure that this is going to be very, very meaningful for you. Valentine, you're from Belgium. Oh, it's got to be pretty late there in Belgium. You're up late. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining me today. It is just 7 o'clock here in the Midwest, and looking to do some training for you guys. So I'm glad that you guys could join me this evening. All right, so let's get into the marketing magic. This is, I've been in real estate for a while. In fact, back in 2017, I was doing a lot of real estate coaching, and I really wanted to head into a different direction. We're going to talk about that and some different stuff that I have done. I figured I thought it was 1 a.m. I was trying to do the math there. I knew it was after midnight. So, all right, I'm going to make this worth your while there, Valentine. If you're not able to stay on though, I totally get it. And I know several others are going to be joining here. I just want to let you know you'll be getting a replay sent to you in your email. So just want to let you know that if you do have to hop off, if you're not able to stay completely plugged in for over the next hour or so, I just want to let you know you will be getting a copy of this in your email. So I just want to let you know that in advance. All right. So try not to multitask. Try to stay plugged in over this next hour because I do want to make sure that this is going to be the best use of your time. Okay. The job of your marketing. I want to get right into this. Your entire existence in marketing, in lead generation, in networking, in whatever you're doing, direct mail, direct response, and putting out ads, whatever it is that you're doing, whatever mechanism you're doing, your whole job of your marketing is to create trust with your client avatar. I'm going to talk specifically about a client avatar here in just a little bit in terms of what that exactly means. But your entire existence is about creating trust. It's not to entertain. It's not to make them laugh. It's for no other purpose. It's not for getting views, whatever it is, but your assignment first and foremost is to get them to trust you. And there are many trust triggers. We're going to go through some of them today. There's other ways to create trust. We're going to talk about that. But the fastest way to create trust, and this is one thing I want you to take away, if nothing else, I'm going to give you the truth bomb right out of the gate. The fastest way to create trust is to demonstrate competence. Demonstrate that you know what you're talking about. Give them proof. Give them some early wins in their marketing. When you start paying attention to the marketing that's really effective, the ones that you're likely to tune into are the ones where they are demonstrating competence, where they're demonstrating that they know what they're talking about. They're showing some sort of proof one way or the other, or just tying in some sort of logic to make sense for you. Right now, chances are if they're reaching you, you are probably their avatar, or you represent something close to their avatar, which is the group that they're trying to advertise to. But this is where I want you to start thinking right now: is how can you demonstrate competence to your avatar, to your ideal client? And that all comes back to these 7 elements of trust. Now, again, I believe that trust comes from competence, demonstrating competence, and also demonstrating character. Even though I might demonstrate lots of competence, like I know what I'm talking about, if I'm showing elements that shows me having a questionable character, like say I came on here and I started using real foul language, and I might have been talking about, I hit the bar earlier before I came here. You're like, really? Like, okay, that's fine, but right, you might start questioning my character. Or if I talk about that I'm married, but I might be going on a date later with some other woman, right? You go, that starts to sound like questionable character, right? Remember, your job, your role as the marketer is to generate and create trust with them. And if you start demonstrating right out of the gate, or at any point rather, trust begins and ends with character. Competence is what allows them to start to trust you much faster. But if you start demonstrating poor character, they're not going to trust you, and you may never know why. So these elements of trust around competence and character, caring trust, confidence, commitment, communication, and consistency, all of these areas of trust. We're going to go into these a little bit at the end, but all of these elements around trust, each one of these areas you must demonstrate. Otherwise, these people will not trust you. Your avatar will not trust you, and you won't know why. And if they don't trust you, they're not going to buy. They just won't. Again, we've all heard the phrase, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. That is what also makes an effective leader. That also makes you effective in your marketing. How confident are you in your product or service? If you're not super confident, they're not going to trust you. Why should they trust you if you're not confident about it? If I came in here and wasn't confident about my ability to teach you about marketing, and I was just kind of wishy-washy and kind of thinking about this or that, you're not going to listen to me. You're not going to trust me. If I wasn't committed, if I seemed super distracted, like I'm kind of on my phone, I'm kind of checking other things and not really committed to the training, or I'm not committed to my ideology, again, you may not trust me. You probably wouldn't. You probably shouldn't. If my communication wasn't clear, if I'm not talking about ums and ahs, I'm talking about really clear about getting the message across in a way that's compelling. That's communication. Again, it's effective for leadership, and it's absolutely critical for marketing. And the last piece is consistency. How consistent are you in what you're saying, and how often are you saying it? That's also really true in marketing, and probably one of the most egregious things that I see in marketing, and definitely in sales. They are not the same thing. We'll talk about that here in the four core functions a little bit, but is how inconsistent marketing people are. They're just throwing stuff out there, seeing what sticks, and they're very inconsistent, not only in their message, but in their frequency. So these are all elements of trust. And I'm giving this to you right out of the gate, because if you're missing any of these components, your marketing is not going to be effective. It just won't. So before we get any further in, here, for those of you who just joined, please let us know where you're coming from. And what is it you do? Where are you from right now? And what are you hoping to learn from tonight? If there's something specific that you're trying to figure out in your marketing. I want to put this out there really quick. I know some people just come into like, oh, we'll just kind of see what I learn. And I know at the end of these trainings, I do all sorts of different trainings around business scaling and financial literacy for business owners and things like that. You can find all those things on Eventbrite. But there's a lot of people who come in after the fact and go, yeah, I took a lot of notes. And I'm like, okay, that's great. But at the end of the day, I want to know, what are you taking action on? I want you to think about, as you're going through tonight, as you're taking your notes. And for those of you who are going to ask, yes, you will be getting, I mentioned it earlier, but you will be getting a replay sent to you, but in your email. But what are you specifically going to take action on? I want you to think about that tonight as you're taking notes, as you're thinking these things through. What are you specifically going to be taking action on as you go through these things? Now, I want you to think about this. You might be thinking, like, the reality is, at the end of the day, you have got to be really effective in your marketing. You have to be effective in your lead gen, because you can have the best, most efficient business. You could be a paragon of truth and virtue, and your sales technique so dialed in, you could sell ice to Eskimos and voting booths to Castro, and you can still starve. This is something that I experienced when I published my very first book. This is called The Time Wealthy Investor. It's out of print now, because I since published a newer, updated version called The Time Wealthy Investor 2.0. But this was my very first book. And it was interesting because I put that book out there, and it's a good book. I'm not saying it wasn't trash. It's about 285 pages, 287 pages. So it's not a give me book. Like it took me a while. It took me about a full year and a half to write and edit, and then another 6 months or so to get it released. But I spent so much time putting this book together. I mean, it is a good book, not just because what people, because I sang so, but it's because people told me who read the book and they were like, wow, this is really good, right? This is a book specifically written for property managers, landlords, specifically who are doing their own self-management of their rental properties. That's who I was writing it for. And I spent all this time. I published the book out. I put the book out there. I really didn't do a lot of promotion. I just kind of took the approach of publishing it and was like, you're welcome, world. Here is the book. And this is the book that you need. And after about a month or so of that, my book sales, I'm going to report to you, were $0. I did not sell one book. I was like, wow, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought. And I was thinking like I was going to wake up the next morning to all these books that people are going to rush in and buy these books. No, because I did no promotion of that book. None. So then I thought, well, maybe I need to put some videos together. Maybe I need to create a brand. So I created a brand called Landlord Coach and had this website all put together and really started putting a lot of effort into this. The website was really coming together. I created funnels. I started posting a lot. I was marketing. I was emailing. All the cajoling, right? Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Like, especially with like the ClickFunnels crowd, like all you got to do is, do this quick video and you'll be selling all this stuff. I paid for Amazon ads. I paid for Facebook ads. I paid for Google ads, and my volume increased tremendously, right? I spent 3 months doing nothing but trying to sell these darn books. And from all that effort, I went from $0 in sales to $95.64. Okay. I'm not kidding. I was so incredibly discouraged. And let me ask you, how many of you would have felt the same way? Like, just I can't believe I spent 2 years writing this silly book and I can't even hardly give the darn thing away. 2 years write and publish, no sales, right? Another 90 funnels, right? Buying other people's, it's terrible, right? Thank you, Michelle. Another, created a brand, spent a whole bunch of money that I really didn't have, more money. I feel like the only people who were making money were the advertisers. And I only had 12 sales. And I think the math on this was $7.97 per book. So this isn't even profit. This is sales volume. So I sold 12 books. So I'm just telling you, it was so incredibly frustrating. I was so just willing to give up. I mean, this is me with a lot more hair at the time. But why didn't they buy the books? Why did you think they didn't buy the books? Well, I mean, I was trying to sell them information when what they really wanted at the end of the day was transformation. I was trying to sell them books when they just wanted their life to be better. And I knew their lives were difficult. I knew in the life of a landlord and the life of a property manager who did not have systems, who didn't have processes in place, they were not making money. Not only were they not making money, they were at the beck and call of all of these people who were calling them at any given time or day or night, didn't have any sort of meaningful way to collect rent or anything else like that, right? I was selling the trip. I wasn't selling the vacation. And fundamentally, they didn't what? They didn't trust me. They didn't trust that I knew what I was talking about, that this book, that they should invest all this time. Not to mention, keep in mind that I'm asking people who are time weary to buy a 300-page book. You see how the market and the match wasn't lining up there, right? So there was a lot of trust issues going on. I mean, if I was going to ask them to invest that much time to read a 300-page book, and I was basically relatively unknown at that point in time, right? Like I wasn't doing a lot to develop trust. So looking back, I needed to do something to get them to trust me up front, right? To, again, buy a book that they would invest days and weeks in reading because, they haven't read the last dozen books that they bought. And, they didn't trust themselves to implement that, right? So they didn't buy it. Think about that I'm not going to talk about this tonight, but think about how much we avoid. I can tell you this is very true for me, how much I will avoid having a sales conversation with someone like they're trying to sell me on something. I will avoid having that sales conversation because I know I'm likely to say yes. And because I can't trust myself. I can't trust myself in the buying situation. That's why I don't allow myself to get into those timeshare conversations because I know it's hard for me to say no to stuff like that. Right. Even though I know like logically in my head, I don't want to do it, but I don't want to have to be put in that position to say no. Right. So this is all related to trust. It is all very interrelated. And I had done very little to demonstrate trust with my avatar at that point for them to want to spend weeks reading this book to know that they're actually going to get any real change in their life. So this is interesting. So I spent this time here. If you look, this is my revenues, my monthly revenues on the left, and this is the time. So you see this little sliver. As I'm heading into 2018, I had hardly any revenues, and then all of a sudden I started to figure it out, right? And my monthly revenues went to about 7,000 a month, and by the time I got to the other side of 2020, I was making about $17,000 a month. So I'm not showing that to impress you, but this wasn't from book sales. This wasn't from book sales. What I did was I used the book to find other ways to help them. And many of those people just needed to be in one-to-one trainings with me or in group trainings. So because they weren't going to digest that information any faster. So what they needed from me is to distill the information down to its simplest parts and give them what they needed. And that's where I started to be able to make some money. So I had to recognize in order to monetize this, it was really important that I had to pivot. It became less important about selling the books and more important about transformation, more important about helping people. So if I was really stuck on trying to sell the books, I would have changed it completely. I would have done it a completely different way. I would have shown up in a completely different way to train or to start just doing video courses or whatever else it was. But I didn't. I started showing up at RIA groups. I started showing up at real estate investor groups. And because I had this credibility indicator of being a published author and writing a book, I was able to demonstrate that. So I'm just showing you this because I don't want you feeling like it's got to be a certain way. When the market responds to you, and this is why A/B testing, where you're testing the control and the variable, A/B testing is so incredibly important when it comes to marketing. You have to test, and when the market gives you the answer, you have to understand the answer. Don't be mad at the answer. But the answer was that I was getting is people who were time weary did not want to read this book. Now, granted, the ones who did were very happy with it, but not everybody read it. In fact, not very many people, especially in the United States, read books. I mean, I read a lot of books. I read about a book about every 10 days, but I'm not the norm. I know I'm not the norm. So I just want to make sure that you understand this is why A/B testing is so important. So let's get into the agenda for tonight. I'm just going to be covering this stuff. We're going to be talking about systems. We're going to be talking about psychology. We're also going to be talking about the 4 core functions of business, then how that all relates to marketing magic. And then, of course, I'm going to give you some resources at the end of the night. All of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about in the beginning part of this, the systems piece, is related to the time wealthy advantage. So if you're outside the United States and you want to order this, you can get it from Amazon. If you're inside the United States, you can get it for a little bit cheaper if you go to strategicboardroom.com. It's right on the front page. Click on it, and you get some other bonuses as well. So this is everything that I wrote in here is around the Viper methodology. Now, I'm not going to go super deep into the Viper methodology tonight because it's not as relevant, but there's a critical component in there around business vision that's foundational for being effective in marketing. And I work with a lot of different companies that are not doing these things. And because they're not doing these basics, they struggle. So if you're here to look for the next hack and you're not doing these basics, I don't know what to tell you because they all struggle, and you're going to understand why they're struggling here in just a couple of minutes. So let's talk about the Viper methodology. It's a framework of how to set up a business from top down. And that starts with vision, infrastructure, process, execution, and reporting. Vision fundamentally is, now, like I said, I'm not going to go through all of the individual components to it, but I am going to key in on vision for tonight. So vision, it has 2 components, personal vision and business vision. The personal vision component is just saying like, okay, cool. Where do you want to go? What do you want your life to look like if it wasn't dictated by income generation? That's the main circuit breaker. So if you're here to learn marketing so you can grow your business or maybe grow someone else's business or just be more effective in your marketing, whatever it is, I would really encourage you to have a really clear personal vision of what you want your life to look like outside of business. The business vision is basically saying, cool, how are we going to get there? That's where you want to go. How are you going to get there? Great. Let's figure that out. Okay. Now, most entrepreneurs, most business owners, most solopreneurs that I end up working with, they never stop and think about that personal vision component. And the danger in that is the danger in having a business vision without giving any consideration to a personal vision is that you end up creating a life that exists to serve the business. And I'm just telling you that that's an empty well that never gets filled up. So I really want to encourage you to spend the time working on a personal vision, thinking about what you want your life to look like if it didn't have anything to do with income generation. There's a lot more I can unpack on that, but we're going to leave that right there just for the sake of time. There are 3 C's of business vision. 3 C's of business vision. And I'm going to tell you right now that understanding these 3 elements is what's going to massively make you stand out in your marketing and make your marketing significantly more effective. If you're unclear in any 3 of these areas, your marketing is going to be ineffective and you won't know why. I'm just telling you. And every time I have worked with a customer, with a client, with a business, every time they have been unclear or they've not been super clear in any one of these 3 answers, or they kind of give me kind of wishy-washy answers, I can tell you that they're struggling in their marketing, that they're not where they need to be. So let's unpack the 3 C's of business vision. So the 3 C's of business vision are core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Core purpose, core values, and client avatar. Let's unpack each one of those. The core purpose is the core purpose of the business. Specifically, what business are you specifically in and what problems do you specifically solve? And you have to be highly specific in your answers. If you just say real estate, that tells me nothing. That tells me, I'm made of questions at that point. Are you in residential real estate or commercial real estate? Or do you do downtown apartments only? Do you sell properties? Do you rent properties? Are you, what do you do? Right? Well, that doesn't tell me a whole lot about what it is. Do you do home inspections? There's such a gamut of things that you can do within real estate. It doesn't tell me much. But if you say, I am a residential realtor and I really like working on the south side of Chicago in this specific district, that tells me a lot more. And that tells me that you probably have expertise in this, 3 square mile block of real estate, that you're probably the expert street by street and you know that area very, very well. If you're telling me that you're going up the Gold Coast or, on the north side or whatever, like that's different. That's different. So I'm just telling you, like, these are the things that are really, really important for me to understand as a business owner. And if you're not clear on your core purpose, do you think it's going to magically become more clear in the minds of the avatar or the minds of the people that you're talking to? No, if anything, once it leaves your mouth and it hits their ears, it's completely up to interpretation at that point in time. Right? So my core purpose is to save time. I save time through education. That's the problem that I specifically solve, is I save time for business owners, because what I do, because I take so much of my day educating myself and spending time in research. Right now, I'm in a PhD program for organizational psychology. I also have a background in accounting. My degree is in accounting. I spent a number of years in business accounting, but I spend so much time in understanding individual and personal psychology, and also understanding all the different aspects of lead generation and sales and operations and accounting around the 4 core functions of business. All of those things I spend so much time educating myself on, so I can distill it down and give it to an avatar like yourself, a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, or a micro business owner, people who employ under 20 individuals. So because you guys don't have that sort of time, there's so much for you to know, and you don't have that time to distill down the information like I do. And I've been doing this now for 25 years. So I'm just saying, when you have all that information and I'm able to figure out, like, kind of, now that I know you're like where you're trying to go and I understand your strategic purpose, now I can start to help you in the most efficient and effective way. I save time. I save people lots of time rather than read all the stuff and research all the stuff on their own. Does that make sense? So you need to be super, super clear about your core purpose, as clear as I am in my core purpose. All right, so let's get to that's core purpose. Let's talk about core values. Core values are simply what you stand for, right? What matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you're no longer in business? Look, for those of you who are business owners on the call, this is really important. And Valentine, like, you say you're a salesman in tech, cloud industry, marketing is a part of the process. I know it. Okay, great. So it's really important that if this is your business, right, or even if it's not your business, it's really important that you understand that what matters to the people in the business in terms of the market. What matters to you about this business, and how would the world be worse off if you were going out of business? In other words, who would suffer, right? If you were out of business, or if you were not doing this IT business, who would be worse off for it? How would the world be worse off if you were no longer doing this? Now, when you're in business for yourself, or it's a business that you own, this is a critical question, because what you start thinking about is your business, of course, is an extension of you, right? As the business owner, the business is just an extension of you. So your core values, your personal core values, those are the things that you would get up off the couch for. Those are the things that matter to you so much that you would be willing to go to war for, right? Those are the things that I'm saying go to war, but but I think you know what I mean. But basically, the things that you would get off the couch because they mean so much to you. If it's just a value, you're like, again, someone breaks into my house and wants to steal my peanut M&Ms. Dude, take my peanut M&Ms. Like, I value them, but I don't value them enough to go to war over. But if you're going to come in and harm my family, that's a different aspect. That's a different problem, right? Now, if someone breaks into my house, I probably wouldn't like that anyway. But, again, my point is I don't value peanut M&Ms as much as I value my family. This is important because this is where you transfer your core values to your business core values. And this is why you have to be really critical, or it's really critical that you take the time to investigate this and search in yourself what your core values are, because core values is what determines company culture. And company culture and company brand are inextricably linked. That's critical. And when you start developing a company brand that people are going to want to come do business with you regardless, because they know what you're about, that's when you know you have a winner. That's when you know that you really have something special going on. So that's core values. The last component to this is your client avatar. Your client avatar is who specifically and ideally do you want to serve? And when you start thinking about who you specifically and ideally want to serve, you start thinking about their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. If you're not clear on this, your marketing is going to be very fragmented and very inefficient. You're going to be spending a lot of money and not getting the results that you want, because you need to start thinking about this in terms of your client avatar with their geographics, their demographics, and their psychographics. Their geographics, of course, is where they are. The demographics is who they are, and the psychographics is how they think and how they buy. What are they kind of interested in, right? The psychographics, I want you to think of the term ALIA, ALIA. You want to think of their attitudes, their lifestyles, their interests, and their aspirations and goals. This is where it's really important to start thinking about your client avatar and define them down and boil them down really well. Give them a name. Are they married? Are they single? Do they have children? What age group are they generally in? Start thinking about that in terms of who they are, where do they live. And this is really important because, again, once you start understanding their interests, if you know that, say that they're an avid reader, that they're a book nerd, right? Someone who's got a book would interest me because I'm kind of a book nerd. I read a lot of books. But someone else who maybe doesn't have a book, they probably wouldn't interest me as much. Not that they wouldn't interest me at all, but they would interest me more. If someone is like into NASCAR here in the United States, or they follow a certain football, European football team, that would be important. That would be important to know, so you can connect with them in a very important way. So this right here, this is the 3 C's of business vision. And like I said earlier, if you're not clear on all these things, if you can just, you're kind of putting half-hearted attempt into the answers and you're really not clear on these things, this is where most businesses will struggle. So really what I want you to do, if nothing else, if you say, yeah, I'm really clear on these two, but that third one, maybe not. Or that's that first or second one. Yeah, I really need to spend time doing it. I really want to encourage you. Every single business that I have worked with that has been struggling, and especially been struggling for sales, it's because they've not been clear on these three things. That's almost universal. Universal. I have not run into it yet where a business that has been doing really, really well and didn't know all three of these things. So that's the systems component. Let's talk about the psychology. And this is, again, systems are important, but systems will only get you so far. So this is what we're going to talk about. We talk about systems. Now we're talking psychology. When we're talking psychology, we're talking about the personal and individual psychology. And now we're talking the business and organizational psychology. So from the personal aspect, you're looking at things like self-worth, self-management, limiting beliefs, right? The personal psychology is really, really important. That's what we as individuals bring to the table. So if you're the boss, you have to have a healthy psychology that you're bringing to the table. Because if you don't, you're going to be infecting the team with all of your individual quirks that sometimes are not so cute, right? So you got it. And we all know, if we've ever worked for a bad boss or a bad manager, we all know what that looks like. So you got to make sure that, especially if you're the boss, you're bringing a healthy personal psychology or individual psychology to the team, to the table. The business psychology relates to external from an external component and to an internal component. So business psychology, again, we're talking internal and external. Internal is related to things like management and leadership. Okay. We're not really going to be talking about that so much today, because even though it is important, I really want to be focusing on the external side of business psychology as it relates to, not so much the contact with the vendors and politics and things like that, but specifically as it relates to your buyers and your buying psychology. So when you start thinking about the buying psychology and why that's important, because this is how people are making buying decisions. So we're going to talk about the 15 reasons why people buy here in a second. I'll give you an opportunity to take a screenshot and start thinking about the 15 reasons why people buy. But, things like making money and saving time and avoiding effort, escaping pain, emotional pain, physical pain, spiritual pain. Maybe they want better health or more love, increasing their status, higher levels of confidence, right? They want higher levels of clarity, right? There's just lots of different reasons why people will buy, and we're going to go through those here in just a few minutes. So when it comes to the four core functions of business, actually, we're going to do it now. Sorry, I forgot that I moved this slide up. But this 15 reasons. Let me get my giant dome out of the way, and that way you guys can take a screenshot of this. But what this does, what you're going to do is you're going to want to take this 15 reasons why people buy, and I want you to think about all the ways, directly and indirectly, of how you help people in all 15 of these areas. How do you help your ideal avatar? How do you help them make money, directly or indirectly? And I want you to think of all the ways you can do it. Get creative with your answers. Try to come up with 10 answers for each of the 15 reasons why they're going to want to buy. Why they're going to want to buy from you, right? How do you help people make money? How do you help people save money, save time, avoid effort, escaping pain, right? How do you help them with more comfort, right? Better health could be in the form of less stress, or giving them back time so they can go back to the gym and work out more. Feel more love with their families or their loved ones, or they're being more welcomed in their tribe, or gaining praise, making them feel important and significant, or increasing their status among the people in their family and their loved ones. People will buy for truth, and they will buy for truth, especially if they have felt lied to in the past. They'll buy for growth, and that could be personal growth. They can be growing in their knowledge, growing in their faith, right? Growing in their wellness. They will buy for novelty, especially if there's been a new approach on an old problem. That's really, really important. Think of all the things that go on in the workout industry, right? The workout training industry, where there's always this new novel approach, right? Think about people being in control or being in contribution to others. So these are all really important things to think about, and how you can help people directly or indirectly help people make, in all these different reasons. So that's your homework. And when you come up with all these different reasons, and some of them are going to be a little bit off the wall. I'll admit that. But the reason why is when you start to unpack that, you're going to get in more into the mind of your avatar. Start thinking about that, and you're going to get to know them at a much deeper level, much deeper level. So remember, fundamentally, what is your job? What is your job? What is your job? It's to create trust. It's to create trust with your client or with your client avatar. And that is the first, second, third, and fifth and last thing that you have to do. Because if you are not creating trust with them, they're not going to buy no matter what. So demonstrate competence and demonstrate lots of character. Those two things, competence and character, even though there's 5 other things related to confidence and caring and commitment and consistency, right? And communication, all of those other areas are important. But if you don't have both character and competence, I think everything else is a fruit of those 2 trees. Honestly, I really do. So the other component, we talked about systems, we talked about psychology. Let's talk about the 4 core functions of business. And this has to be true in every business. And the 4 core functions are lead generation, sales, operations, and accounting. And your client's journey through your company happens in that order. So keep that in mind. If you're putting out lead generation activity or networking, or you're writing direct mail pieces or putting out some sort of advertising, and and you're not clear on your core values, you're not really clear on your core purpose or your offering, you're going to really struggle to get people in a consistent way, because when they finally come through to convert on the sale, it's going to seem disconnected, and they're going to be confused, and the confused mind will always say no. That's really important. So I just want to make sure you understand from the 4 core functions of business, these 4 functions are really critical from a top-down perspective. And this, we're going to come back to this here in a little bit. But the 4 core functions of business around lead gen, sales, operations, and accounting, again, your customer's journey happens in this order. And the lead generation piece never ends. So that's the 4 core functions. Now let's talk about some marketing magic. Remember, your job is to create trust with the client avatar. So again, we talked specifically, it's important that you have a product or service for a client avatar who aligns with your core values. You want a product or service with a client avatar who aligns with your core values. That is really important. So you might think, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Those are all of the elements of the 3 C's of business vision that we talked about earlier. So you may be thinking, well, what would be the product or service? This is where you're able to create an offer. And when you create the offer, now you're able to create marketing that aligns with that offer. So what's the product or service? Well, now the offering is, again, I'm not going to get into the offering piece right now, but again, I could sell this marker for $1, right? For $1. Well, now all I have done is set a base price for what this is. And now everybody else is going to try to beat this price of $1. But what if I said, look, I'm going to sell you this marker. The marker is $10,000. But this marker, what I'm able to do with this marker is you can sign any check with this marker, and it automatically triples the amount of that check. Would you now be interested in paying, say, $10,000 for this marker? Maybe, right? Because I'd have to demonstrate why that would be true and everything else, right? Now I'm making this up, and I'm being kind of coy on purpose. But the reason being is because if I start bundling this marker with this pen, and this magnifying glass, you'd say, well, why would I want any of those things, right? Now I can tie this together and bundle this together as an offer. Okay. And now I can also unbundle this. So I'd say, yes, you're going to get all of these things for one price of, say, $500. But you're gonna get them sent to you at different times. You're gonna get this one sent in 1 week's time, and then after you learn how to use this, I'm gonna send this to you in a week after that, right? And then after you get that, I'm gonna send this 3 days after that, right? And then at the end, you're gonna get this 1 month later. And by all the time, you're gonna understand how to use all of these things individually. I don't want to send them to you all at once, because I don't want you to lose them. I don't want you to break them, because each component is very, very important. Right. So you might think, well, yeah, what I did is I unbundled my delivery. Right. So that's how you start to segment yourself and differentiate yourself with your offers. And this is really, really important. Right now, we're in a 12-week or a 90-day training program with some folks that I'm working with in this group training, and they're understanding all of this stuff about bundling and unbundling. But you've really got to understand, if you're going to create an offer, you've got to understand the product or service and the client avatar that's going to align with your core values. It's just critical. Like, if you don't do this, your marketing's not going to be as effective. It's also important that you deliver massive value to them over and over and over. And this is how you can demonstrate competence, by bringing value to them, whether you're trying to sell to them or not. So we talked a little bit earlier about trust, 7 elements of trust, but these are some trust triggers that's really important for you to bring up in your marketing. So this is how you can trigger trust within the individual in your marketing. So in other words, one thing that you can do is demonstrate authority. Now, how have I demonstrated authority? I've talked a little bit about my businesses. I've talked a little bit about, some things that kind of make sense. I've written 8 different books. You can see the book sitting back here. If you want, you can go on Amazon and search my name, right? You'll see all my books, right? There's different things that you can do. You can go to Strategic Boardroom and see that I've got a website, like a legit website, and people that have been on that website, right? You can see that I've got some authority. There's lots of ways to demonstrate authority, right? Position, credentials, things like that. The next thing that you can do, I want you to start to think about how you can demonstrate authority to get people to trust you. If you don't do that in your marketing, there's other ways to do it, but I'm saying authority is probably one of the easiest ways to do that. Now, but keep in mind, it's got to be relevant. If I say that I'm a PhD, and you're like, well, that doesn't mean anything. That I'm not a PhD, but I'm just saying, like, if I said that I was a PhD, or if I was a doctor, I have a master's degree in basket weaving, and you're like, okay, but you're talking about business stuff. What does that have to do with the price of tomatoes? So you got to make sure that the authority is in alignment with what the avatar would see as important. Then there's something called affinity. Affinity is where there's a correlation. There's a correlation where people would have familiarity, and that could be something where it's based on frequency or familiarity. So in other words, how often do they see you? This is why a lot of people talk about, hey, I post on social media 12 times a day. Yes, that's important, but it's not the only thing posting is not marketing. It's because they've seen you. Now, again, I'm getting a lot of people who are seeing me more and more. I'm on lots of different podcasts. I'm on stuff that's not just nationally here in the United States. I'm in stuff that's international across the world. But these are the sorts of things where people are starting to see me more and more. They're starting to get an affinity for me. Now, again, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. That's okay, right? I'm not trying to be. I want to be able to truly, genuinely help people. Some people will respond to my brand and some people won't. And that's totally fine. And that's important. What's important about that is that you be magnetic. And because a magnet has 2 poles, right? Let's say this is a magnet. A magnet will attract. And what does the other pole do? What does the other pole do? It repels, right? So it attracts on one end, it repels on the other. And that's exactly how your marketing should be. Your marketing should both attract on one side and it should repel on the other. So you're attracting the people you most want to work with, the people that are most in alignment with your core values, and you want to repel those who don't. Some people have come on this call and left. That's totally fine. And they may leave for lots of different reasons. I have no idea what's going on in their world. They might have showed up and go, I hate this guy's face. Well, I'm sorry. This is the face I have. It was the face I was given. I can't do much about it. So if that's the case and they leave because they don't like me, fine. That's okay. I don't want them in my tribe. The people I want in my tribe are the people who want to be here, right? That's the people I want in my tribe, the people who are willing to lean in. And that's not going to be everybody. In fact, it's probably only going to be about 10 or 15% of the people who actually show up. That's a lot of people who don't want me. Oh, that's okay. I'm pretty good. My wife's still going to love me. My kids are still going to, try to spend all my money. That's just the way it is. Right. But that's why it's also, you have to be really dialed in on your personal vision, because now you can start to put your stock and your worth into things that truly matter to you. So we talked about authority. We talked about affinity. Now let's talk about affiliation. Affiliation might sound a lot like affinity, but it's not. Affiliation is being associated or connected to a trustworthy source. So let's say that you're you were tied to the NFL in the United States, or say that you were tied to the Better Business Bureau here in the United States, which is literally just like a membership, right? You just pay for it. What other organizations? The Chamber of Commerce is something that many people can just buy, right? You can buy an affiliation to it. If you're overseas, there might be some trade journal that you can be a part of just by simply spending a little bit of dollar, spending some money and being affiliated with them that people will see as trustworthy. So this is really important, is that they see you being associated with that, and they see you connected with that because they already trust that other entity. So they're affiliating trust with you because you're associated with them. Okay. BNI is a big one, right? People tend to, I was in BNI for a number of years, and people tend to have a little bit of trust for people who are in BNI. Not everybody, but people, I generally do, but especially if people have been in BNI for a while, because they have standards associated with their membership. The next piece is endorsement. When they get endorsement from other people. So who could you get to endorse your product or service, right? My first and third books I had endorsed by Ivan Meisner, who is the founder of BNI. It was fantastic to get an endorsement from him. I love that, right? Great guy, and I can't say we're super close. We're not bros. We don't hang out, but he's a friend. I would consider him a friend. But the other thing is, like, when it comes to endorsement, so my last book, the Time Wealthy Advantage, I had that endorsed by my clients, by the people that I was most able to help. So every endorsement in there is from people who I worked with. And I think that endorsement carries a heck of a lot more weight than maybe some obscure authors who barely even know my name. Doesn't that make sense? So that's why it was really important for me to get endorsements from people, because that demonstrates social proof. So that's the power of endorsement, right? Like, this is someone who they really and they really see value in you. And the last piece here is demonstration, right? So demonstration. Oh, it's not the last one. Sorry, demonstration. So demonstration is by demonstrating, right? It's demonstrating competence. So you can demonstrate character, you can demonstrate competence, you can demonstrate how much you care. That's a really important thing too. Is that just demonstrating? That's kind of straightforward in terms of a trust trigger. Speaking about certain statistics, things like that, you can demonstrate knowledge and so forth. And the last piece is to demonstrate and show vulnerability. Now, you got to be a little careful about this, because sometimes people go a little bit too far too fast. It's like when you meet someone right away and you're like, hey, like, how's your day going? You're like, I have diarrhea. You're like, oh my gosh, that's a lot. Right? Way too much. It's fine to demonstrate vulnerability, but you've got to make sure that it's measured. Don't go too far too quickly. So I want to make sure that, yes, demonstrating vulnerability absolutely allows people to trust you, but you've got it. You can certainly overuse it. It's kind of like lavender. A little goes a long way. So you can demonstrate some vulnerability. I don't use it necessarily as a tool, but with people who maybe are married, a lot of times I might just say, yeah, we've really struggled in my marriage, and we're great now, but there was a period of time and I wasn't sure we were going to make it. And anybody who's been married really understands that, and that they appreciate that level of vulnerability, because they think, like, I don't want to, tell anybody about my bad marriage stuff, right? But that's just stuff that people can relate to, and people seem to resonate with that. But I don't go like super deep on that. I just kind of let the conversation guide itself. So those are the trust triggers. If you can use any of these in combination in your marketing, this is what's going to help you get people to trust you, and this is what really creates magic in your marketing. So I cannot emphasize this enough about generating and creating trust, because if your people aren't going to trust your marketing, they're never going to get to the sale. They're just not. They're not going to get there. They've got to have some measure of trust in you, in your product, your service, and in your company. And if they don't trust all three, again, they're not going to buy from you, right? They got to trust you. They got to trust the product or service. They've got to trust your company. All three of those things must exist. The last piece, again, when we talked about the 7 layers of trust, or the 7 areas of trust around competence and character, caring, confidence, commitment, communication, and consistency. These are all things that I've I talked about a little bit earlier. I'll go a little deeper here, but again, competence is just demonstrating you know what you're talking about. Character is pretty straightforward. It's just, are you someone who they would want to emulate, or are you someone that they feel that they could trust their children to be around with, or other people, or trust to make solid business decisions in all aspects? I'm not one way here on a webinar and then another way when I go home. I'm one person. And when you start to have that sense of people being too different, or being duplicitous, or just putting on a face, I will tell you, like, there was a period of time that I did that. Like, I felt like I needed to be this flim flam, dynamic speaker. And that is not necessarily me, right? Like, I don't mind to have fun. But the minute I started being more authentic and demonstrating my character and all my quirky weirdness, people are like, yeah, I kind of like this guy. And the people who don't, guess what? They leave. And that's a blessing, right? You've ever heard, like, some people bless, or everyone's a blessing. Some people bless you when they come, and some people bless you when they leave. But the thing is, that's fine. It's fine that they leave, because again, someone else might be a better fit for them, and that's totally fine. Again, caring. How can you show that you care? This can be a little bit, like, you want to. I think it's demonstrated probably best by listening and those sorts of things. But it's also showing that you understand where they're coming from. So if I'm, let's say that I'm marketing to single mothers, and single mothers have a lot of mom guilt. Like, mom guilt is a real thing, and not necessarily single mothers, but I think all mothers just generally sharing this. But if you were to targeting single mothers and you're talking about, hey, look, I know, let's say that you're marketing some sort of personal service for them, and you're saying, hey, look, I know what it's like to experience the mom guilt. You deserve this, though. You deserve the best for yourself, so you can show up the best for your kids. Man, that's going to really resonate with someone who is a single mom who experiences mom guilt. They're going to be like, man, they get me. That person gets me. They really care. Again, I talked about confidence, being confident in your marketing, being confident in the message. And that's really important, to use really firm, solid language that demonstrates you're confident in what you're selling, what you're marketing. And if you're just kind of like, well, it's kind of like this and that, it's not going to land. You've got to be confident in your marketing. Again, this is also ties into leadership as well. When are you committed? Are you demonstrating commitment to them, to your product, to your service? Are you willing to provide a guarantee? That shows commitment. Are you willing to stand behind it? Are you willing to give a really good guarantee? Like, hey, if you don't like this thing, try it for 30 or 45 days. And if you still hate it, I will double your money back. Whoa, that's pretty committed, right? That's really conviction. That's a convicted or conviction statement, and showing and demonstrating your commitment. Communication, it goes straight forward. You also want to make sure that your communication matches with the avatar. So if I was here, for example, and I'm using all these like $64 words, and I will tell you, I know that my language used to have a certain level of sophistication to it, which would really kind of isolate me. And I didn't realize that I was doing it. And I really wasn't. It's just how I spoke. But I started to recognize that people were not buying from me. And I was like, what in the heck, man? Like, they just felt like I was talking above them. And I was like, oh my gosh, I would never want anybody to feel like I was better than them. Hell, I went through that enough in my childhood. I would never want anybody to feel less than me. But that, you've got to be careful about that in your marketing, that you're not going to be using $64 words. Or if you do need to use a $64 word, make sure you explain that $64 word in a way that's in plain language. You want your language in your marketing to be around 5th to 7th grade level, the 5th to 7th grade level. And that's really, really important to use to figure that out. Now you can run this through different readers, like on online. You can, like, hey, what's the Flesch reading scale for this thing? It's called the Flesch reading scale. There's the Flesch Kincaid reading scale, and you can run a paragraph through there and just say, hey, where's this at? And it tells you the readability level, and you want it to be around the 5th or 7th grade. And that's hard for a lot of people. but you want your communication to be really simple, not overly simple, not overly simplistic. Your people are smart, but it makes it a lot easier for them to understand. And it makes them realize that you are very reachable, that you're very attainable, that you're in alignment with them. And then last is consistency. How consistent are you in your message, and how consistently are you showing up? If you run one ad, or you put up one billboard, or you do one thing once in a while, you're not consistent enough, and they're not going to trust you. This is why it's important. Yes, fine. Post on social media every day, right? But don't always post about the same thing. Post it in a theme that's relatable to your avatar, but don't always post about your business every single day. Yes, be consistent, but be consistent about what your avatar needs, whether you provide that as a product or service or not. Then they're going to start to trust you. Then they're going to start to lean in and go, oh, you know what? He does talk about insurance quite a bit, right? Not necessarily about buying my crap, but just demonstrating value, bringing value to the table. So that way, when people think, like, I'll give you a great example. I've got a friend, Rob, who sells insurance. And Rob does a very specific type of business insurance. Well, I need a surety bond. And a surety bond is a certain type of insurance that it's got a very specific purpose. So I messaged him because he has occupied that mental real estate for me, because he's so consistently showed up for me as my provider of insurance that I could say, hey, can you get me a surety bond for X, Y, and Z? He goes, well, we do surety bonds, but I'm not sure that we do it in this situation, but I can find out. So guess what? Because of his consistency and how he showed up to me, he potentially may get more business out of me. Now, this isn't a huge thing, but it still may be something that will benefit him, right? So being consistent is really, really important. And it's also really important that you're consistent in your product and service. Someone, like, again, if you're if you're inconsistent, this is perfect. I know I'm going a little bit off script here, but there was a guy, and I'm going to change the name, but there was a guy who I'm going to change the name here, but he was known as like Real Estate Ralph. And I was like, wow, like he had such a solid brand. And Real Estate Ralph, or I think it was like, we'll call it Real Estate Ralphie. And I was like, wow, Real Estate Ralphie, he's like, I mean, he would show up and he had this unbelievable brand. Like he had a very certain color, and it was like yellow. It was like this bright yellow. Anytime you saw something pop up and it was this color yellow, Real Estate Ralphie was, like you always knew he had some message related to that. And it was really consistent until one day Real Estate Ralphie shows up and he's marketing some stupid mushroom coffee on his page. And I thought, did someone hijack his page? And then I realized, it was him. It was his stuff. I'm like, what in the world are you doing? He basically just completely obliterated any trust that I had in him as this real estate person. Real Estate Ralphie had spent all this time building a very consistent brand, only to start selling mushroom coffee for like $15. I'm like, dude, are you kidding me? How much mushroom coffee are you going to sell that's going to be a higher ticket than what you're doing in your real estate business? It made no sense. It would be like if Starbucks coffee started selling chainsaws. It was so inconsistent. I was like, oh, I'm out. Like, dude, I'm out. So I just want you to understand that consistency in message is also important as it relates to your core, your your core product, right? Like specifically, what it is that the business does, right? The core purpose. What is the core purpose? What are the core values? What are the client avatar? It's really important that you're very specific in that core purpose, because if you're not specific in that, or if you're not consistent in that core purpose, you're going to be wandering all over the place. That's people who like, oh, I do a little bit of this and I do a little bit of this over here, never really gaining traction in any one specific thing. My suggestion to you, I think that's where I see a lot of solopreneurs go wrong, is that they wander too much. They're spending too much time and doing a little bit of this and doing a little bit of that, and they don't get enough traction in any one specific area to really make it big. I'm just telling you, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've made those mistakes. I've done a little bit of day trading and a little bit of a little bit of house flipping and a little bit of leasing, buying and selling. But when I was most dialed in and specific on one area and made a bunch of money, and that was in real estate, and that was in buy and hold real estate. And when I really dialed into property management and really grew that property management business, and I got that up and running on its own. I mean, I was making plenty of money and I had plenty of time left over to now I could start going and doing other things. So again, build one bridge at a time, use that knowledge that you use to build that bridge, and then go build another bridge. Don't try to build 7 bridges all at once. Don't even try to build 2 bridges all at once. Build one bridge at a time. So that's the trust component. So the last piece here, we went through the systems, the psychology, the 4 core functions. The last little piece here, again, we talked about the 4 core functions of business around lead gen, around sales, operations, and accounting. I want to make just a point here that if you're looking at lead gen, sales, operations, accounting, let me get myself moved down here so you can see this a little bit better. But this is generally how a lot of people look at these 4 core functions. First, you do lead gen, then you do sales, then you do operations, then you do accounting. I want you to look at this from more of an infinite marketing perspective. That lead gen blows right on through and keeps right on going all the way down through that infinity symbol at the bottom. You never stop marketing to them. You never, ever, 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 ever stop marketing to these people once they are in your atmosphere. And here's a couple of rules and when to stop marketing to these people. Okay. These are the rules that I follow, and they're pretty simple rules. This is when you stop marketing to them. When they have demonstrated to you that they are not your client avatar, they have demonstrated to you that they are not in alignment with your core values, or they have died. This is it. Now, you could probably wrap these into 2 things to say that they've demonstrated to you that they're not basically your avatar, meaning that they don't align with your core purpose or, your core values or whatever. But generally, assuming you don't want to work for dead people, it's pretty much when they've demonstrated that you're not alignment with your avatar. That's it. Otherwise, you continue to market to them. You continue to send them things of value. You make sure you have a CRM that is that where they're going to continually being followed up with through that CRM. CRM is a customer relationship management software. That could be Pipedrive, that could be Salesforce, that could be Go High Level, right? HubSpot, like all of those things which manage the client relationships. And I'm not talking about, putting them into automations. I think most people go into automations way, way, way too fast. But just reaching out and having organic conversations. Every single one of you here is going to hear from me. From my email, you're going to get an email from me. And yeah, if you email me back, I'll email you back eventually. I'm not great on email, but I will email you back and say, hey, let's have conversation, because I'm interested in people. I enjoy conversing with people. So this is where I see, again, like I mentioned, this point here is that people tend to go to automation way too soon. It's cool. They get their email address, they shove them in something around MailChimp or Constant Contact or whatever, and they don't intend to have any sort of organic conversation with them except trying to sell them something every now and again. And that's just kind of a crappy relationship, in my opinion. So again, once you know their problems, you can then deliver value to solve those problems. And you can't do that with an automation sequence. Like, people are not going to respond back to those things unless you're real specific and you have a real compelling call to action. So the important thing here, the important takeaway for this is to give away tons of value. And again, I want you to think about how you can demonstrate value. You can give away tons of value by demonstrating competence to your avatar. Come up with white papers, come up with some statistics, find something interesting that you can share with them that would be really compelling and really bite-sized for your avatar. Don't send them a 5-page email that they're never going to read. Make it like 100 or 110 characters, something that they can read in 60 or 90 seconds, and use really simple language. Remember the Fleisch reading scale, 5th to 7th grade, 5th to 7th grade. That's where you want to, that's called Fleisch Kincaid reading scale. Sorry, I keep calling it Fleisch. But this is where I'm saying, like, you want to demonstrate that competence to your avatar. And then the key is 4-to-1. Send them 4 pieces of value to 1 ask, meaning, hey, I want to send you, do you want to buy something? That's the ask. So I know we covered a lot of ground. I know this is a very top down look at this, but you have to be really, this is foundational. So I know we talked about seeking knowledge to understand versus seeking knowledge to take action. I know I didn't give you a lot of super actionable stuff, with the exception of making sure you're dialed in on the 3 C's, right? Core purpose, core values, client avatar. Go through the 15 reasons why people buy. Make money, save time, avoid effort, escape pain, et al. So those are the sorts of things. But I really want to know, what you plan. You don't have to type it in if you don't want to. But what are the things that you want to do that you can take specific action? Now I'm going to give you I'm going to invite you to join me in my school community, but I want to give you a little fun story here first. This was a guy. If you see this photo right here, this is a guy. He's a bank robber holding a gun. Like, this is a legit thing. And this was in January in 1995. There was these two bank robbers who robbed a couple of banks in Pittsburgh at gunpoint without any attempt to disguise themselves. And it was kind of funny because they covered their faces in lemon juice, thinking the lemon juice would make them invisible to security cameras. They were convinced of that. And they were shocked that they were caught. They were caught within a few days, right? When they figured out, who these people were. Well, it was interesting. So interesting, in fact, that these two researchers, these two psychologists by the name of Dunning and Kruger, they said, we've got to figure this out, because there's no way like this, what is going on with this phenomenon? And this is known as the Dunning-Kruger effect. So I'm going to go through this really fast, but it's just kind of interesting how this actually shows up in psychology. Is that if you look at this thing here, where we all start down here at the bottom, where we basically know nothing. We don't have much confidence. There's confidence on the left and competence on the bottom. So on the left, the x-axis is competence and the y-axis is confidence. So we start out, but the thing is, we grow as we start out on something. We grow in our confidence very, very quickly. You see that peak there, that peak of Mount Stupid, is all of a sudden we start realizing, like, wow, how hard could this be? I'm going to get started and this is going to be great. I'm going to make zillions of dollars, right? But then all of a sudden you start realizing that you don't know what you don't know. And you crest at the peak of Mount Stupid and you start heading into the valley of despair. Now, this is where false confidence comes into play. And now, if you stick with this is where you start up the slope of enlightenment. You stay with it in your competence over time as you start to gain a little bit more confidence, but you're also gaining in more knowledge, right? That's where you get to that, you're heading up the slope of enlightenment. That's where you get to the plateau of sustainability. And that's at the very top there. Okay. So the reason I'm sharing this with you is because right now, many of you may be struggling because you don't know what you don't know. And that's totally fine. But what I want to encourage you, if you got any benefit from this tonight, to get out of that valley of despair, because most people quit in the valley of despair. That's where they get shiny object syndrome. They realize this is going to be a lot more work than what they realized. They're thinking, oh my gosh, I have got to get out of this because this is awful. And that's when they really encourage them to stay with it, stick with it, find someone that can help teach them, and they can head up that slope of enlightenment. So what I'm offering to you guys, if you're interested, it's not going to cost you anything, is you can go to this school community, and the link is right there in the notes in the comment section. If you want to go ahead and click on that, there's no cost to just be in the community. If you want some specific training that's going to help you with all of these different functions around the Viper methodology, around creating a vision, and not just a personal vision, but a business vision, creating infrastructure for your business, creating processes, not just tactical processes, but also strategic planning around execution, around reporting, around the 4 core functions of business. If you're looking for something like that, it's just a low cost right now. It's $39. It's going to go up as the community grows. I literally just started this. So this is all very new right now. So you're getting in really quite literally at the ground level. And what I would suggest is get in there and try it for 90 days. If you don't like it, if you don't get the results you want within 90 days, I will absolutely give you your money back. I have no reason to hang on to your money if you don't think it was worth it, but I can absolutely guarantee that it will be. So again, if nothing else, like I said, just join the school community and just check it out. It's a great platform. I like it way, way better than any sort of Facebook groups or anything along those lines, just because I'm able to put courses in there. I'm able to have communication with you in there. Not to mention, it's completely separate from Facebook. You're not on Facebook to be entertained. You're going to school to specifically be educated. So it takes it. I really like the specificity of the platform. So if you've not been in there before, it takes literally nothing to create an account. I would be interested to have you in there, and reach out and say hello. Reach out and send me a chat and let me know that you joined. Let me know where you came from, and be happy to have you on board. All right, everybody, that is all I have. Thanks so much for sticking around tonight. I know many of you are in different parts of the world where it is very late. So thank you for sticking around tonight. You will be getting a replay on this in your email, so please pay attention to that. And I will see you guys in the school community. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next time.